For 7 long years, the people of Vena Prime had lived under fire. The sky, once soft blue and full of singing birds, was now a dark red ceiling of smoke and war. The Cathar Dominion had come without warning, a cruel empire from the edge of space, with ships like black mountains and soldiers who felt no pain. They wanted Vena's clean water, its green forests, its gentle people. And when the Vanans refused to bow, the Cathar began to crush them, slowly, coldly, without mercy. City after city fell. Towers turned to dust, rivers burned, families vanished in the blink of an eye. Only one city still stood, Nirval, the last light in the dark. Its walls were cracked. Its power came from broken generators. Food was shared in tiny pieces. Children played in ruins, pretending broken stones were spaceships, pretending they were strong. But every night, as the bombs echoed in the distance, the people would gather in the underground shelters. No lights, no music, just silence. And one soft phrase passed from mouth to ear: "They're coming." Hoped out for rescue. Not for luck, for humans. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were a joke, a myth, a species from a violent, wild planet called Earth, a world where storms could wipe out towns, where the ground could split open, where animals with teeth and claws ruled the night. How could such weak beings survive? The alien scholars asked. They must be primitive, emotional, broken. But the Vanans knew better. They had seen what humans could do. Long ago, before the war, a human ship had saved Vena from a comet. No grand weapons, no magic tech, just quick thinking, brave hearts, and a captain who said, "We're not leaving anyone behind." Since then, the Vanans watched. They learned. Humans had fought terrible wars on their own world, wars that killed millions. And yet, they rebuilt, they forgave. They reached for the stars, not with pride, but with hope. They cured diseases, fed the hungry, and sent messages into space just to say, "We are here, we are trying." No other species had ever risen so far from so much pain. Ambassador Siren, once a poet who wrote songs of peace, now led her people with fire in her voice and tears in her eyes. Her home was gone, her family was gone, but her faith was not. She stood on the broken steps of the old council hall, looking at the tired faces around her. "The Concord has forgotten us," she said, her voice soft but strong. "The Zenth say we are lost. The Menzarns say we are weak. But I say this, we are still standing. And as long as we breathe, they are coming." And then one night, the sky screamed, not from a bomb, from something entering. A ship rough, jagged, covered in scars and old battle marks, tore through the clouds like a falling star. It didn't glide, it crashed, slamming into the dead fields outside Nirval, skidding through dirt and fire, leaving a long black scar in the earth. Silence, then, a hiss. The hatch opened, smoke poured out, and from the dark, figures stepped forward. Humans. They didn't wear glowing armor, or float above the ground. They walked heavy boots on broken soil, faces hidden under helmets, shoulders bent not from fear, but from weight. The weight of war, of loss, of never giving up. At the front was Colonel Elias Rook, a tall man, with a face like stone eyes, like fire, and a scar that told 100 stories. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He just looked around at the ruins, the broken towers, the scared eyes watching from the shadows. Then he took off his helmet and nodded behind him. Soldiers moved fast. Some checked weapons, some pulled medical kits. One, Lieutenant Jin Reyes, ran to a wounded child, wrapped her in a thermal blanket, and held her hand until she stopped shaking. Another, Miracle, began setting up a field clinic with tools pulled from a dented metal box. No orders, no show, just doing what needed to be done. Rook walked to Siren. No salute, no speech. He just said, "We got your signal." Siren could not speak. Tears fell. She whispered, "You came." Rook looked at the sky, at the Cathar warships, circling like vultures. "We always do," he said. That night, for the first time in 7 years, the people of Vena lit real candles, not for safety, but for joy. Food was shared, songs were sung. Children laughed, and high above, the Cathar commanders watched the heat signatures rise, not from weapons, but from life. They did not understand. They had faced armies with perfect discipline, machines with flawless logic, warriors with no fear, but they had never faced a species that had survived floods, fires, wars, and still believed in kindness. A species that, when the world burned, simply said, "Let's fix it." The siege had lasted years, but now, the Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk. The Cathar didn't wait. They never did. The very next night, under a sky lit by dying stars, there came a storm of fire and metal. Hundreds of war drones, sharp as knives and fast as lightning, screamed down from orbit. Plasma cannons fired from the hills. The ground shook. The air burned. The people of Nearval ran for the shelters, hearts pounding, hands gripping children tight. But this time, something was different. This time, they weren't alone. At the edge of the city, where the broken fields met the ruins, the humans stood, not in a perfect line like machines, but in a rough, ready circle. No glowing shields, no floating platforms, just dirt, wire, and weapons older than most alien races. Colonel Rook stood in the middle, calm as a mountain. He didn't shout, he didn't panic, he just looked at his team. Jean Reyes, Mita Cole, Dex Torvald and the others, and said 2 words, "Hold ground." Then the attack hit. Plasma bolts lit the night. Explosions tore craters in the earth. Drones dove like hawks, blades spinning. The Venans watching from the shelters held their breath. This was it, the end. But the humans didn't run. They smiled, because they had already won before the first shot. While others slept, the humans had worked. Jin Reyes, who once survived 3 days in a collapsed mine on Mars, had spent hours digging silent trenches deep, narrow, and hidden under fake ground. Dex Torvald, a man who fixed subway tunnels in New York with chewing gum and wire, had rigged old power cells into traps, buried under dust and silence. And Mira, she had done something even smarter. She studied the case single quotes, tar, not their weapons, their fear. She found recordings of their distress calls, high-pitched sharp sounds they made when injured. Then she played them softly, through hidden speakers. Buried in the dirt. Like bait, the Cathar drones came fast, slashing, burning, hunting. But the first wave didn't see the wires. They didn't feel the weak ground. And then snap a tripwire. A click, a roar. The earth exploded. Hidden charges blew mud and fire into the air. Drones were torn apart. Others fell into deep pits lined with electric spikes. Some tried to turn, but the sound of their own kind's pain echoed from the speakers, confusing them. They turned on each other. Chaos. From the shadows, human soldiers fired, not in wild bursts, but in short, sharp cracks. 1 shot, 1 hit. 1 kill. No wasted bullets. No wasted lives. Jin moved like a ghost, crawling through smoke, dragging a wounded comrade to safety. Myra patched a bleeding leg with her last bandage, then handed her rifle to a Venan volunteer. "You know the drill," she said. "Aim, breathe, fire." And they did. For the first time, the Venans fought back, not in fear, but in hope. Up on the hill, Warlord Zarnak watched through his warglass. His black armor gleamed, his fists clenched. "This is not possible," he growled. "They are animals from a broken world. How do they fight like this?" His general bowed. "They do not fight like soldiers, my lord. They fight like survivors." Zarnak roared, "Send the second wave. Crush them." And they came heavier this time. Armored walkers. Giant machines, with flamethrowers and crushing feet. The ground trembled, but Rook just turned to Dex and said, "Now." Dex pressed a button. From beneath the ruins, old pipes rumbled. Water, not from the sky, but from broken city tanks, burst through the ground. The field turned too thick. Sticky mud. The heavy machines sank. One by one, they stuck. And in the mud, the humans had placed something worse, chemical gel, made from old ship fuel and dirt. When pressure hit, it ignited. Boom, 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 boom. The machines burned from below. Rook stood tall, rifle in hand, watching the Cathar forces fall into their own trap. This wasn't war like the galaxy knew it. This was survival. This was home. Back on Earth, humans had fought floods, earthquakes, wildfires, not with power, but with cleverness. They built rafts from trash. They climbed out of rubble with bare hands. They helped strangers without thinking. And now, on a dying world far from home, they brought that same fire. By morning, the battlefield was silent. Smoke rose, bodies burned, but the city still stood. Cathar drones lay in pieces. Machines melted. 30 warwalkers destroyed. Human losses, 12. Vanan losses, 0. When the sun rose, the people came out slowly at first, then faster. They touched the broken drones. They hugged the soldiers. Children placed small flowers on the graves of the fallen humans. Siren walked to Rook, her eyes full. "You didn't just save us," she said. "You gave us back our courage." Rook looked at the sky, at the Cathar ships still circling, now quiet, unsure. "We didn't win today," he said. "We just showed them the door." And in the command bunker, far away, Warlord Zarnak smashed his throne. He had faced empires, armies, gods in armor, but never a people who turned dirt and pain into a weapon. Never a species that, when the world burned, didn't ask why us. But what now? The siege had lasted years, but now, the Cathar knew one thing. The morning after the battle, the city of Nirval woke to silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of death, but the silence of hope. Smoke still curled from the battlefield. The ground was scarred, the walls still cracked, but the people walked taller. Children smiled. For the first time in years, someone laughed, a real laugh, loud and free. The humans didn't celebrate, they worked. Colonel Rook walked through the ruins with a welder's torch in hand, fixing a broken water pipe. Jin Reyes taught volunteers how to set traps using old wires and pressure plates. Mira Cole turned an abandoned garage into a full clinic, using medicine from her dented kit and tools made from scrap. Dex Torvald rewired the city's power system, using broken solar panels and a design he sketched in the dirt. No orders, no praise, just doing. But high above, in the cold dark of space, Warlord Zarnak watched and burned with rage. He had sent his best drones, his strongest machines, and still, the humans stood. Not only stood, they laughed in the mud. They sang while they worked. They helped strangers like it was nothing. "This is not war," he growled to his generals. "This is madness. They should be broken. They should be afraid." One scientist bowed. "They are not like other species, my lord. They do not run from pain. They live with it." Zarnak sneered. "Then we will give them pain they cannot survive." And so, he unleashed the scourge. Not a bomb, not a blade, but something far worse. A wave of silence that fell from the sky like a shadow. It didn't burn, it didn't explode, it just entered. It slipped into minds, into dreams, into hearts, and it whispered, "You will lose. You are weak. You are alone. Why keep fighting?" At first, no one understood. Then, the children stopped playing. The workers dropped their tools. The guards stood still, eyes empty. Even the birds fell quiet. The scourge was not a weapon of flesh. It was a weapon of soul. It fed on fear, on doubt, on the quiet voice inside that says, I can't. And it was winning. In the command bunker, Siren fell to her knees, hands over her ears. Make it stop, she whispered. I can't carry this anymore. Jin, Reyes leaned against a wall, breathing hard. My brother died on Mars. I couldn't save him. What if I fail again? Even Rook felt it, a cold hand in his chest, pulling him down. Memories rose, fallen soldiers, burning cities, funerals with no end. Was it all for nothing? The voice whispered. The city began to break, not from outside, but from within. Then, in the darkest moment, Miracle stood up. She was small, not a fighter, not a leader, just a woman who once studied the human mind on a broken planet far away. But she knew pain. She had sat with soldiers who wanted to die, with mothers who lost children, with people who had nothing but still chose to help. She walked into the center of the bunker, turned on the old speaker system, and pressed a button, and then a sound. Soft at first, then clear, a child's voice singing off-key. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. It was an old Earth song, no power, no magic, just a simple melody from a time before wars, before space, before anything. But it was real, and it was human. One by one, the soldiers looked up. Jin wiped her face. Dex stopped shaking. Rook took a deep breath. The song played, and with it, memories came. Not of pain, but of love. A mother's hug, a friend's laugh, a sunrise after a long night. The scourge fought hard. The whispers grew louder, darker, but the song did not stop. Mira played another, a man singing about hope, a girl laughing on a beach, a soldier writing home. Tell Mom I'm okay. Tell her I miss her pie. The people of Vena began to cry, not from sadness, from remembering. Siren stood, her voice weak but strong. We are not alone. And then, something amazing happened. The Vanans began to sing, not in their language, not in harmony, but in human broken words. Wrong notes, but full hearts. The scourge shuddered. It could crush bodies. It could burn cities, but it could not kill hope, because humans didn't just survive pain. They carried it. They turned loss into love, fear into courage, grief into purpose, and that was something no machine, no empire, no cold logic could ever understand. By morning, the scourge faded, not destroyed, but defeated. The Cathar ships pulled back. Zarnak stared at his screen, face pale. How? He whispered. How do they keep standing? His general said nothing. He just played a recording the song, still looping in the bunker. You are my sunshine. Zarnak slammed his fist. They are not soldiers. They are monsters. But he was wrong. They were not monsters. They were not gods. They were not perfect. They were human. And that night, as the stars shone through the smoke, the people of Nir gathered again, not in fear, not in silence, but in song. Children danced. Soldiers smiled. Siren held Rook's hand and said, You didn't just bring weapons, you brought heart. Rook looked at his team, tired, scarred, but unbroken. We didn't come to fight a war, he said. We came to remind them, and us, that no matter how dark it gets, light still wins. The siege was not over, but now the Cathar didn't just fear the humans' guns, they feared their souls, because the Deathworlders didn't just survive hell, they brought hope right back into it. Asterisk. The fortress of the Cathar stood like a nightmare on the edge of Nir-Val. Built into the black rock of Mount Vorn. It was a tower of steel and fire, rising 10 levels high, wrapped in shields that turned bullets to dust. Its cannons could level a city in minutes. Its drones never slept. And from its peak, Warlord Zarnak watched the humans like a vulture, waiting, hating, planning. The Vanans called it the skull. The humans called it the problem. We can't fly in, said Jin Reyes. studying the scans. Too many turrets. We can't blast through, said Dex Torvald. The walls are layered like an onion made of armor. We can't sneak in, said Mira. They've got motion sensors, heat traps, even smell detectors. Rook stood silent, staring at the mountain on the hologram. His fingers tapped his leg, a habit from old war days. Then he smiled. We don't go over, he said. We go under. The plan was simple, impossible, and so human. They would tunnel, not with big machines, not with lasers, but with hands, grit, and quiet. Dex Torvald led the job. He had spent years fixing subway tunnels under New York, where one wrong move could flood a city. I've worked in the dark before, he said, tightening his helmet. I know how to listen to the earth. 50 volunteers joined humans and brave Vanans. They carried geothermal borers, small drills that melted rock with heat, leaving no shock waves. They packed chemical gel, a sticky paste that weakened stone without noise. And they brought courage, the kind that grows when there's no other way. They started at night, a small hole, hidden behind a collapsed building. One by one, they slipped in like shadows, returning to the deep. The tunnel was narrow, hot, dark. The air was thick. Breathing felt like swallowing sand. Water dripped from the ceiling. Rats, real ones, from Earth, somehow survived the trip, scurried in the dark, making some laugh. Others jump, but they kept going. Down, down, forward, silent. Every meter was a victory. Every hour was a fight. After 3 days, the roof cracked. A rock fell, nearly crushing Private Cato, a young soldier from the Pacific Rim. He screamed, not from pain, but from fear of being heard. They froze, no sound, no movement, just breath, when it was safe. Cato looked at his leg, crushed, bleeding. Mira knelt beside him. I can save it, she said, but it'll hurt. Cato grabbed her hand. Do it. I didn't come this far to crawl back. She worked fast, set the bone, injected painkillers, wrapped it tight. Kaito. Didn't cry. He laughed. Tell my mom, he whispered, I'm still on the mission. They carried him the rest of the way. After 10 days, they hit solid rock too thick for the BORERS. Dex studied it. We need to weaken it, but quietly. So they used sound, not loud, but precise. Tiny vibrations, tuned to the rock's frequency, like singing to a mountain. For 2 days, they pulsed the gel with soft waves, and slowly, the stone began to crack. When it broke, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Not empty. It was full of Cathar supply lines, pipes carrying fuel, wires carrying power, tunnels leading straight into the heart of the fortress. They were inside, but not safe. One wrong move, one noise, and they'd be dead, so they moved like ghosts. Jin led a team to plant resonance charges, small devices that wouldn't explode, but shake the structure from within. Dex wired the fuel pipes to leak slowly, silently. Mira placed biosensors that mimicked Cathar heartbeats, fooling the security systems. And Rook, he left a message, on a scrap of metal. He wrote in broken Cathar, You built your fortress like a tomb. We grew up in one. Welcome to the dark. They placed it right on the main control panel. Then they pulled back. All they needed now was a spark, and Rook knew just how to light it back on the surface. He gathered the Vanans. When you see the mountain shake, he said, you run, not away, forward. Why? Asked the young boy. Rook smiled. Because that's when we win. At midnight, Rook gave the signal. Dex pressed the trigger. Deep below, the charges HUMMED. Not a bang, not a flash, but a deep, rolling pulse, like a heartbeat from the earth. The fortress shivered, then crack. A fuel pipe burst. Fire spread. Alarms screamed. The power flickered. The Cathar ran not to fight, but to survive. But they didn't know the truth. The fire wasn't the danger. The tunnel was Dot. Because now, the humans weren't outside. They were in. Jin and her team stormed through the back tunnels. Mira led medics to free prisoners. Rook climbed the inner stairs, one slow step at a time, his rifle ready, when he reached the top. Warlord Zarnak stood waiting, armor gleaming. The mountain was bleeding fire. From deep within its bones, smoke curled like dying breath. Alarms screamed through the fortress halls. Cathar soldiers ran in panic, not toward battle, but away from it. The humans were inside. The tunnels were open. The power was failing. And for the first time in 7 years, fear had a new master. Warlord Zarnak stood on the highest tower of the fortress. His black armor cracked, his sword glowing with stored energy. He looked down at the chaos, the burning corridors, the trapped soldiers, the Vanen rebels charging through the gates with fire in their eyes, and he saw him, Colonel Rook. Climbing, not fast, not loud, just coming, step after step, boot on stone, rifle slung, hands empty. Zarnak roared into the coms, "Kill him. 1,000 rewards to the one who brings me his head." But no one moved. His own soldiers hesitated, because Rook wasn't charging, he wasn't screaming, he wasn't even looking at them. He was helping a wounded Vanen child to safety. He was pulling a trapped worker from rubble. He was handing water to an enemy soldier who had collapsed from smoke, and still, he climbed. Zarnak's fists shook. "You are not a warrior," he growled. "You are a ghost." But Rook kept coming. When he reached the top, the sky was red with fire and dawn. Wind howled between the broken towers. Below, the battle raged, but up here, there was only silence. Rook stopped 10 steps away, no weapon drawn, just his eyes, hard, tired, but unbroken. Zarnak sneered. "You face me with empty hands? Do you want death?" Rook shook his head. "I want you to see." "See what?" "Your weakness. Your false courage." "No," Rook said. "I want you to see why we fight." And then, he told a story. Not of war, not of victory, but of a boy. A long time ago, Rook began. On a stormy night, a boy stood in the ruins of his home. Floodwaters had taken everything. His house, his parents, his town. He was cold, he was alone, but he didn't cry. He picked up a piece of wood and started building. Not a house, not even a shelter, just a small raft. Because he thought, maybe someone else is out there, holding on. He paused. "That boy was me." Zarnak said nothing. Rook continued. "We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we remember what it's like to lose, to hurt, to be afraid. And when we see others suffering, we don't look away, we go." He took a step forward. "You built this fortress to crush hope. But we grew up in places worse than this. We lived in cities that burned, in homes that drowned, in wars that never ended. And still, we got up, every single day." His voice didn't rise, it cut, "And now, we're here. Not to kill you, not to rule, but to say, no more." Screamed and charged. His sword flared with deadly light. One swing could cut a man in half, but Rook didn't dodge. He moved like water, like wind, like a man who had danced with death too many times to fear it. He ducked, rolled, grabbed a broken pipe. They fought, not like warriors, like survivors. Was stronger, faster, armored, but Rook was smarter. He used the wind, the broken floor, the sunlight in Zarnak's eyes, and then he saw it. A weak point in the armor, near the neck, where the plates met. A tiny gap, a flaw. Rook waited. Zarnak lunged. Rook stepped into the attack, close, dangerous, fearless, and drove his combat knife into the gap. Zarnak froze, his armor sparked, his breath stopped, his sword fell. He dropped to his knees, not dead, but broken. He looked up at Rook. "Kill me," he whispered. "End it." Rook pulled the knife out. and stepped back. No. Zarnak's eyes widened. Why? I would have killed you, I know, Rook said. But we're not like you. He turned and walked to the edge of the tower. Below, the Vanans had taken the gates. The last Cathar soldiers were surrendering. Jin Reyes stood on a broken tank, raising a flag, not of earth, not of war, but of Vena, a green leaf on blue sky. People cheered, children cried, old men smiled through tears. Rook didn't. Look at them. He looked at the rising sun and said, loud enough for all to hear, this is what winning looks like. Not blood, not fear, but freedom. Zarnak crawled forward. You don't understand, he gasped. Without war, what am I? Rook turned. You could be better. Silence. Then, from the sky, a sound, not weapons, not screams, music. Music. Miracle had turned on the old broadcast system. A simple earth song played, soft, warm, full of life. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Zarnak listened, and for the first time in his long, cruel life, he wept. Not from pain, from shame, from hope, because he had spent his life crushing the weak. But these humans, they had been broken, and still, they built. They had been hurt, and still, they helped. They had every reason to hate, but they chose to heal. Hours later, the last fires were out. The fortress was taken. The people were free. Siren climbed the tower, her silver face glowing in the morning light. She looked at Rook. It's over. He nodded. For now, she smiled. You could stay. Rule with us. Rook laughed a deep, warm sound. We don't come to take, we come to help. And when the job's done, we go. He looked at the city, children running, families hugging, songs rising into the sky. This, he said, is enough. And, as the sun rose over Vena Prime, the humans began to pack their gear. Not as conquerors, not as heroes, but as people who had walked through fire and carried light in their hands. The siege had lasted years, but in the end, it wasn't weapons that won. It was heart. Asterisk. The battle was over. The fortress had fallen. The sky was clear. The people of Vena Prime were free, but the humans didn't. Celebrate they worked, while others danced in the streets. While music played and tears of joy fell. Colonel Rook and his team were already moving, not to rest, not to eat, but to build. They pulled broken pipes from the rubble. They cleaned water tanks clogged with ash. They patched power lines that had not worked in years. No one asked them to. They just did it. Jin Reyes led a team through the ruined market, clearing debris by hand. Her gloves were torn, her arms scratched, but she didn't stop. When a young Vanan girl handed her a cup of water, Jin smiled, drank half, and gave the rest to an old man sitting in the dust. You don't have to do this, he said, voice weak. Jin wiped her face. Yes, I do. Myra Cole turned an old storage room into a full clinic. No lights, no machines, just bandages, medicine, and her hands. She stayed for 36 hours straight, cleaning wounds, calming children, holding the hands of the dying. When someone asked if she needed rest, she said, I'll sleep when every heart is beating. Dex Torvald climbed into the broken power grid, crawling through dark tunnels filled with wires and rats. He fixed what others said was impossible. Rewiring systems with scrap metal and memory. Back home, he joked, I fixed a subway with chewing gum and a prayer. This base is easy. And Rook, he was everywhere, helping dig a well, teaching kids how to purify water, standing guard while families rebuilt their homes. No medals, no speeches, just doing. Siren watched from a broken balcony, her heart full. She had seen empires come and go. Alien warriors who demanded praise, diplomats who spoke of peace but left when the fighting ended. But the humans, they stayed. Not for glory, not for power, but because someone needed help. One evening, She found Rook sitting alone on a pile of rubble, eating a dry ration bar. "You could have left," she said, sitting beside him. "You won, you saved us. You could be heroes in your own world." Rook chewed slowly, then smiled. "We're not heroes. Then what are you?" He looked at the city, lights flickering back on, children laughing, families cooking over small fires. "We're neighbors." Siren blinked. "Neighbors," Rook nodded. "On Earth, when a storm hits, people don't wait for orders. They go door to door. They share food. They fix roofs. They say, 'You're not alone.' That's not war. That's just being human." She looked at the stars. "No other species does this. The Zenth demand payment. The Emzarn record victory. But you heal, and then you leave. Because help isn't a trade," Rook said. "It's a promise." That night, something changed. The Vanans didn't just rebuild their city. They rebuilt their spirit. They used human designs, simple, strong, made to last. They dug wells, like the ones on Mars colonies. They built solar panels like the ones in Earth's deserts. And in the center of Nirval, they built something new. Not a statue of a warrior, not a monument to war, but a garden, flowers from Vena, trees from Earth. A small fountain that played the same song Mira had used to fight the scourge. "You are my sunshine." And on a stone, at the entrance, they carved words in both languages. "We were broken. They helped us rise. Now, we grow." Even the Cathar prisoners were treated with care. No cages, no chains. Just food, medicine, a chance. Mira walked among them every day. "You don't have to stay enemies," she said. "You can choose something new." One former soldier, his face scarred, looked at her. "Why do you help us? We tried to kill you." She didn't answer with words. She handed him a shovel. "Because the world is full of broken things," she said, "and someone has to fix them." Slowly, he took it and began to dig. Weeks passed. The city bloomed. The fields were replanted. The schools reopened. The songs returned. And still, the humans worked. Until one day, Rook gathered his team. "It's time." Jin looked up already. He nodded. "They don't need us anymore." She didn't argue. She just packed her gear. That night, the people came, thousands, holding candles, holding flowers, holding gratitude. They didn't cheer. They thanked children, handed drawings. Elders bowed. SYR in stepped forward, with a small box inside. A seed from the first tree grown in the new garden. "For your world," she said. "So you remember us." Rook took it gently. "We could never forget." As the human ship powered up, the people sang, not in. The human ship Ares 1 didn't vanish in a flash of light. It rose slow, heavy, scarred, climbing through the sky of Vena Prime, like a bird learning to fly again. Smoke trailed behind it. The engines groaned, but it climbed below. The people stood in silence. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of loss, but the silence of wonder. They had seen gods in armor, empires in fire, warriors who ruled with thunder, but never a people who fought a war and then stayed to plant a garden as the ship disappeared into the stars. The wind carried a single sound, a child's voice, singing softly, "You are my sunshine." And then another voice joined, then another dot, soon. The whole city was singing broken notes, wrong words, but full hearts, because they weren't just singing a song, they were singing a promise. Back in the halls of the intergalactic Concord, the news spread fast. The Cathar siege has fallen. Vena Prime is free. The humans did it, not with weapons, but with tunnels, traps, and songs. The counselors didn't believe it. The Deathworlders laughed. Counselor, Trell of Zenth, his voice like cold glass. They live in storms and mud. How could they defeat a galaxy-class army? Ambassador Siren stood, her silver robes glowing under the chamber lights. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten. She played a recording. It began with silence, then a child singing, then the sound of digging, then a voice. ColonelRook.com/strong. We don't fight to destroy, we fight to protect. Then came the battle sounds, not screams of rage, but shouts of help. Get the kid out. Medic, here. Stay low. We've got you. And at the end, music. Laughter. A city breathing again. The chamber was still, no one moved. Finally, Trell spoke, his voice quieter now. They didn't just win, they cared. Siren nodded. And that is why they could not be broken. Across the galaxy, the story grew, not as a legend, not as a myth, but as proof. On Zelos 9, a mining colony, trapped under ice, played the song You Are My Sunshine in their dark tunnels, and kept digging, hour after hour, until they broke free. On Mezarn 4, a warrior race known for their silence watched the footage of Myra Cole healing a child, and for the first time, they cried. On Orbital Station Theta, diplomats from 10 species sat together, not arguing, but sharing stories of loss, of hope, of second chances. And on a small school on Vena Prime, children learned a new lesson, not about war, not about weapons, but about humans. The teacher, an old man who had lived through the siege, stood before the class. He held a photo. Rook, Jean, Mita, Dex standing in the mud, tired, smiling. These people, he said, did not come from a perfect world. Their planet shakes, their skies burn, their history is full of pain, but they do not stop. They do not hate, they help. A little girl raised her hand. Will they come back? The teacher smiled. No, but we can be like them. And so, they began. The children planted a garden. They shared their food. They helped the weak. They sang. Years passed. The Cathar Dominion did not vanish, but it changed. Some returned to their worlds. Some chose to stay, not as prisoners, but as learners. One former soldier, once loyal to Zanuck, stood before the Concord. He wore no armor. He carried no weapon. He said, "We were taught that strength is in fear, that power comes from control, but the humans showed us another way. They were hurt. They were tired, but they kept going, and in their eyes, there was no hate, only purpose." He bowed. "I wish to learn, not war, but peace." Silence. Then one by one, the counselors stood, even Trell, on Earth. No one knew, no grand celebration, no news reports, just a quiet file marked Vena mission, complete, filed in a dusty database. But in a small bar in Dublin, an old soldier named Dex Torvald laughed with friends, his hands rough, his heart light. In a clinic in Jakarta, Mira Cole taught young doctors, healing isn't just medicine, it's presence. In the red deserts of Mars, Jin Reyes trained new explorers. The ground may break, but you don't have to. And in a quiet room in New York, Colonel Elias Rook looked at the seed Siren had given him. He planted it in a small pot by the window. Every morning, he watered it. Every night, he watched it grow, not because it was special, but because it was alive, and that was enough. The galaxy kept turning. Wars still came. Pain still existed. But something had shifted now. When a world was in darkness, when a people felt lost, when hope seemed too small, they didn't just wait. They looked to the stars and whispered, "Maybe the humans will come." And even if they didn't, they remembered what they taught. That courage isn't the absence of fear. That strength isn't in fists. That the real power is in reaching out a hand when no one else will. The ripple had begun, and it would never stop. The war on Vena Prime became a story, not just for one world, but for many children across the galaxy grew up hearing it not as a tale of battle, but of hope, of a small team from a storm-racked planet who walked into darkness and didn't just fight, they cared. On Earth, no statues were built, no holidays. declared. The humans who went to Vena didn't return as legends. They returned as people, tired, quiet, carrying memories more than medals. But the galaxy didn't forget, and slowly, quietly, something began to change. On Vena Prime, the garden grew. The seed Siren had given the humans never made it back to Earth, not because it was lost, but because it was planted in the center of Nirval, where the fortress once stood. A tree now rose, tall, strong, with silver-green leaves that shimmered in the wind. It was a Vena oak, but its roots were wrapped around a piece of earth soil, brought back by a volunteer. People called it the Unity Tree. Every year, on the day the humans left, children placed letters at its base. Most were simple. Thank you. I want to be brave like you. I helped my friend today, like you taught us. One letter, written by a girl named Lyra, said, I used to be afraid of the dark, but now I think if humans can live on a planet with monsters and storms, and still be kind, then I can be brave too. And they were. Schools began teaching not just war history, but human history, how they survived ice ages, how they fed billions on a broken planet, how they sent messages into space just to say, we are here, we are trying. No other species had ever done that, not because they were weak, but because they believed in connection, even when no one answered. On Orbital Station 7, a group of young engineers from different worlds met in secret. They didn't plan war. They didn't build weapons. They built a water purifier, based on human designs from Mars colonies. Simple, strong, easy to fix. When asked why, the leader, a young Cathar named Vex, once raised to hate, said, the humans didn't fix our fortress with power. They fixed it with ideas, with scraps. With will don't need to be like them. We just need to learn from them. Their first machine was sent to a drought-stricken moon. It saved 2,000 lives. No one knew who built it, but on the side, in small letters it read, made with human hands in mind, on Earth. Colonel Rook still lived in his small apartment in New York. He didn't speak of the war. He didn't wear his uniform. But every morning, he sat by the window, watching the small tree grow, the one from Vena's seed. It wasn't tall yet, but it was alive. One day, a package arrived. No return address, just a note from the children of Vena. We grew this for you. Inside a small pot, with a tiny earth flower, a dandelion. Stubborn, wild, unkillable. Rook smiled. He placed it beside the Vena tree. 2 worlds, 1 window, 1 act of kindness, returned. Meanwhile, the Concord began to change. No loud decrees, no sudden revolutions, but small things. Diplomats started meetings not with arguments, but with stories. Medical ships began carrying human-style field kits, simple, repairable, full of heart. Even the cold Zenth began playing soft sounds in their healing chambers, not music, but laughter, recorded from Earth. Counselor Trell, once the loudest skeptic, stood in the chamber one day and said, we thought strength was in silence, in logic, in control. But the humans showed us that true strength is in feeling and still moving forward. They are not the most powerful, not the fastest, but they may be the most human of us all. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, every species stood, not in salute, but in respect. On a distant mining colony, a worker named Kale was trapped under rubble during a cave-in. His comms were dead, his light was fading, hope was gone. Then, he remembered a story. The tunnel under the mountain. The humans who crawled through rock and fire just to help. He took a deep breath and began to dig, one hand at a time. 2 days later, he was found weak, bleeding, but alive. When asked how he survived, he whispered, I thought of the Deathworlders, and I said, if they can do it, so can I. The galaxy didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still wars, still pain, still fear. But now Now, there was something new. A choice. When a ship broke down, crews didn't just wait for rescue. They tried to fix it, like the humans would. When a child cried, parents didn't just silence them. They held them, like Myra Cole did. When a city burned, survivors didn't just flee. They turned back, like Jin Reyes, to help the one left behind. The humans had not conquered. They had not ruled. They had not even stayed. But they had shown that courage isn't never being afraid. It's being afraid and acting anyway. That strength isn't never falling. It's getting up every single time. And that the most powerful force in the universe is not a weapon, not a star, but a single, quiet decision. I will not give up, and I will not let you do it alone. The seed had been planted, and now, the forest was growing. The stars were quiet. No war, no sirens, no fire raining from the sky. Just peace on Vena Prime. The Unity tree stood tall, its silver leaves shimmering under a golden sun. Birds nested in its branches. Children played in its shade. Around it, the city had grown, not with cold metal or towering weapons, but with gardens, schools, and open spaces where people could simply be. The scars of war were still there, cracked walls, buried ruins, names carved in stone, but they were not hidden. They were remembered, and every year, on the same day, the people gathered, not to mourn, not to boast, but to remember. They played the old song, they read the letters, they lit candles for those who had helped, especially the ones from Earth, far away. In a small apartment in New York, Colonel Elias Rook sat by his window. The tree from Vena's seed was now strong, stretching toward the sky. Beside it, the little dandelion still grew, stubborn, golden, alive. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. But every year, on that day, he put on his old uniform, not for pride, but for respect. And he stood by the window, hand over heart, as a single signal played on a cracked old speaker. It was a message, not loud, not grand, just a voice. Human.com. Real. This is Earth. We read you. We're here. It had been sent long ago, into the deep dark, with no idea if anyone would ever hear it. But now, someone did. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds. That same signal played in hospitals, in schools, in broken ships, drifting through space, because the humans had done something no one expected. They hadn't conquered. They hadn't ruled. They hadn't even asked for thanks. They had simply shown up, and in doing so, they taught the galaxy one unbreakable truth. You don't need to be the strongest to change everything. You just need to care, and never stop. One night, on a distant moon, a young girl named Lyra, the same one who once wrote the letter, stood on a hill. She was no longer small. She was a scientist now, working on clean air systems for her people. Above her, the stars burned. She pressed a button on her device, and from a small tower, a signal rose, not in her language, not in Venan, but in English. The same words, spoken in a soft, clear voice. This is Vena. We read you. We're here. It traveled through space fast, silent, full of hope, and it wasn't alone. From Xylos 9, we read you. From Mezern 4, we're here. From Orbital Station 7, we remember. One by one, worlds joined, not in war, not in fear, but in unity. The signal grew, not in power, but in meaning. And somewhere, deep in space, a human ship picked it up. The crew fell silent. Then, the captain smiled, and sent one last reply. Simple, strong, from the heart of Earth. Copy that. We hear you, and we're not going anywhere. Years passed. The story of the Deathworlders became more than history. It became inspiration. When a planet faced disaster, they didn't just wait, they acted like the humans would. When a child was afraid, they said, be like Rook, be like Jin, be like Mira. When a species stood on the edge of war, they remembered the humans didn't win with weapons. They won with will. And slowly, the galaxy changed. Not overnight, not with force, but with kindness, with courage, with hope, because the humans had proven something. No logic, no empire, no cold machine could ever erase, that a species born on a world of storms, pain, and loss, who still chose to help, to heal. To sing in the dark was not weak. It was the strongest of all. And so, as the stars turned and new generations looked up, they didn't just see distant suns. They saw possibility. And when the night grew cold, when fear crept in, when the universe felt too big and too silent, they whispered the words that had traveled farther than any ship, deeper than any war, stronger than any weapon. Wait, the humans are coming. And in that moment, no one felt alone.